Well, I just want to wish you all a very happy Valentine's Day, happy Friday, happy, 3-day weekend. We have a lot to celebrate. And it's actually also my birthday today. So I couldn't think of a better birthday present than to be here with all of you. And thank you, Justin. And to have this conversation. And it's just a really a gift to me to have this time with you guys today. And as people are coming in, um, we would love for you guys to put your information, your name, and your organization in the chat so we can follow up and just be connected with everyone that's here. I'd like to say a little something about our organization and Partners for Wellness / Connect-OC. Connect-OC is a program of Partners for Wellness in partnership with the Orange County Healthcare Agency. Our focus is education and promoting existing mental health resources in Orange County with the mission to make these more accessible and widely known to youth and young adults and adults who support them. And I will let's see, I think we've got 17 people. Maybe we can start with our staff introductions, and then I'll introduce you to our amazing panelists. So I'd like to start with our program director, Crystal.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Like Erin said, I'm Crystal Bleischer with Partners for Wellness and Connect-OC. So I'm the program director overseeing the project and been doing this since 2020 now, which is kind of hard to believe. So we're in our 5th year of this project. So happy to have you all here. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And then Sarah.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Chalice. I'm one of the outreach coordinators. I'm also a co-host with Erin for the coalition meetings every month. Yeah, I'm just really happy to be here, and thanks for coming.
Thanks, Sarah. And Joy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joy Medina. I'm an outreach coordinator on the team as well. So I help Sarah with resource fairs and planning all that. And happy to be here. I'm excited for this conversation. So.
Thank you, Joy. And then we also have Vivi Vu on our team, and she's in one of her things is doing our marketing, and she's in a class right now, but I just definitely wanted to give her a shout out as I know you all love her as we do. And then I am Erin O'Flaherty. I know I've met many of you before. I'm the community engagement manager for Connect-OC, and I get the fun and the privilege and the honor of running our cultural arts and mental health outreach program. We partner with organizations across Orange County, especially those who serve dire needs communities, and we provide workshops, cultural arts workshops in the visual arts and music and photography and mental health writing and short film, and and even improv, and we're able to connect with different organizations and their clients and provide a safe space in a workshop setting to create empowerment and self-growth towards increased mental wellness. And I will give an introduction to our panelists, and then I'd like to read definition of allyship, because that is our topic today. We'll be talking about how we can be an ally for underserved communities and just culturally diverse communities in general. And so, yes, I have the honor of being joined by Keya Vance. She is the professor of Black Creative Expressions course under the African American Studies Department at Cal State Fullerton. She is also one of our amazing teaching artists, so it's nice that you get to see her in this capacity as well. She wears many other hats, but I'll let her touch on that when we dive into the questions. And then we also have Stephanie Camacho-Van Dyke, and she is the Senior Director of Advocacy and Education with LGBTQ OC. And I've had just a wonderful honor of working with her for a long time. And so really grateful for you both. Thank you for being on our panel today. I know it's going to be an uplifting and encouraging conversation about really being an allyship for different communities, and especially for the transitional age youth demographic. So the definition of allyship that I'm using today is allyship is the action of working to advance inclusion through intentional, positive, and conscious actions within one's sphere of influence. A person who respects, listens to, builds trust with, advocates for, and amplifies the voices of marginalized people and groups may be recognized as an ally. So my first question for the panelists is please describe your position with your organization and or your role in your personal life that contributes to your role as an ally. And Stephanie, do you want to start?
Sure. I'll kick it off. Thank you, Erin and Crystal, for hosting us. This is always a great opportunity to kind of share a little bit about, our work at the center by extension, and also to help inform the conversation. And so, hi everyone. My name is Stephanie, pronounced she, her, Keya. I'm the Senior Director of Advocacy and Education at the LGBTQ Center OC. I also oversee our youth and young adult services. And just to give you some background, I've been with the center for quite a while. I started as a volunteer back in 2011. I'd recently moved back down from college, and I was looking to get involved, and just volunteer in my community. Up in Northern California, you all are probably aware that there's a really big LGBTQ community up there. And when I moved back down, I was looking for something similar to what I experienced up in Northern California. And so I looked around and I saw that there was a center that existed. I reached out and I was given the opportunity to help facilitate a youth group once a week. I wasn't really sure what to anticipate, but I really, really enjoyed working with young people and just hearing about their experiences and just being able to, hold space for them. And if anything, working with queer youth, honestly, on top of that, which was really, really great. And so over time, I was able to become hired onto the center, still kind of supporting our youth and young adult services and helping expand them and just really creating space here at the center to really support the holistic need of LGBTQ youth. And so really, working at the center is just given me so much opportunity to provide, mentorship opportunities, leadership opportunities for our young people, and then also mental health resources to ensure that our TAY youth have the support that they need to move forward in their lives as well, which is really great. And so it's just not me, but I also work with an amazing team that really helps, build the program to what it is. And so in addition to supporting our young people at the center, we also have the opportunity to work with different schools and school districts across Orange County and really advocating for, more student support, inclusive policies that really affirm our LGBTQ young people, especially those who are low income and BIPOC as well. And so it certainly takes a village, and I'm just one piece of the puzzle in a sense, but just knowing that, we're all here to have this conversation and talk about it, and what we could do to expand our allyship is really important. So that's just a little bit about me in a nutshell, and the work that we do at the center. And I'll hand it over to Keya.
Hi, everybody. Good. This is feels like good late morning. But thank you for being here on this dry Friday. Let's hope it stays that way. But we also need the rain, so I'm trying not to complain. But yeah, I love what you said about being a part of the puzzle, Stephanie. I feel like I'm another piece. And also just seeing all of you here really makes me think about, man, how big is this puzzle? I think it's so hard to really capture. Erin mentioned my work with as a teaching artist / engagement coordinator with Partners for Wellness. Also as a lecturer of Black creative expression, which is very interesting in that course. What I found with teaching about Black art, it involves so much of exploring how art artists or even allies or the word I'm thinking of is it's right tip of my tongue. Activists have used art to explore different issues, but really express, a lot in terms of mental health. And that's a very interesting history in the Black community. But also, I think primarily in this meeting, I'll probably teach more so from the hat that I wear in the community as it relates to my church. I feel like of all the things I've done, it's been the most outward facing and expressing. Oftentimes without restraint in the area of working with people. And I would say Tay, but I think it extends beyond the parameter of Tay. Transitional age youth, for those who are like, what's Tay? Typically like 16 to 25-year-old. So I think in it's I would say it's a very interesting kind of like stair step. It's like the teaching artist, I get exposed to the youth, and we're probably working through some theater exercises, and there's some things that come up that I feel like, oh, I can't really address or like say. Very similarly to like being a lecturer, there are things that come up in students' discussion boards or their papers or their responses to one another, and it's like there's these parameters that's like I can't really engage beyond almost really kind of seeming neutral, in many ways. And so I think my work in the faith-based community has been way more like elbows in, front lines kind of work. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you both for giving us that background and really sharing more about what you do. Our next question is, how significant is allyship for promoting positive mental health, and especially with transitional age youth?
Yeah, I'll kick it off again. So I think allyship, excuse me, is incredibly critical for, fostering positive mental health among our young people, and in particular the young people that we work with. At the center, we do have like drop-in spaces, we have youth groups, and I guess in this particular context is like our social support youth groups and young adult groups. We'll have young adults come in and we ask, hey, like, how's your week been? It's good to see you. And really creating that environment that's welcoming and supportive really shows that, the adult or you care for that young person. Because oftentimes, like, you know, just kind of sharing the statistics or the data points about LGBTQ young people is that they're more often to experience, depression, anxiety, family rejection, which many of us, have shared as well. And those are incredibly heavy, topics in a sense. And so just knowing that there's one person that's like listening to you and hearing you really can make all the difference. Um, and so I think really like being an active and affirming ally is one that provides that emotional support, that's hearing you and really wants to, see how you're doing. And it's also helping them create those safe spaces where they can feel valued, where they can feel supported, just because there's so much going on in the world right now, and just to have them make an effort to come out to the center or to hop on one of our Zoom calls, I think it makes all the difference in that sense. And so really it's ultimately just like showing up, being a listening ear, and then, giving them the opportunity like, hey, like it's not good now, but maybe like, it's not the end of the world, and well, not the end of the world in this sense. There's a specific saying that I like that one of my professors shared with me is like, if you're not satisfied with something, then, don't leave it at that, but that there's opportunities to kind of fix it or to amend it or to move forward from it. I don't know if I'm articulating it correctly, but it's essentially like if you're not happy with something, it's not the end. Just keep moving forward and strive to make that change, which can help in a sense. So yeah, that's kind of like in my sense, like being an ally is also advocating and promoting a positive environment for folks to process and just meet other peers and hang out and so on and so forth.
Wholeheartedly agree. Yeah.
Yeah, similarly, I feel like it's incredibly significant, right? Like then it becomes, okay, well, why? I also want to backtrack a bit and just acknowledge like having these questions to think about. I think everybody on here should get these questions. It's incredibly helpful to reflect on how this applies to you and your community. And I think with this question, I really thought about like promoting positive mental health with Tay. It's very important, right? And I really think about how I do attend like a diverse church, right? Like in ethnicity and race and all that, but also in terms of age. The oldest person at the church, the coolest person at the church also is like 98. But the sharpest, the credible memory, drives himself. Um, and I think about the range of like how, not everybody gets older, but like typically the story goes, you're young, you get older. But I think about how much you don't have to do this work to get older. You just get older. So I think it's incredibly significant to promote positive mental health within this age group. Because even with some of the folks who are in their 40s and 50s, it's like typically the things we're unpacking as far as it relates to mental health has to do with what happened in their past. I'm not even going to say typically, every single time. It's
Yeah.
every single time. And so when you think about this particular Tay group, it's like, like how might that make a difference, when they having it now? How might that like in many ways you realize how much you're shaping someone's future as you introduce certain practices, or like Stephanie mentioned, like these safe spaces earlier on is incredibly helpful.
Yes, that was wonderful. Thank you. And our next thing is, I thought this question also made me think, like you said, do you feel that Tay in our community show us the ways that they need to be supported by allyship? Do you see the specific needs, and how do you meet that need? Are they letting us know, or is it something that you're more trying to figure out? Like, how do you need me to be your ally?
Well, Keya, I just love your last response where it's like advocating for their needs to support their futures in a sense. That was just so beautifully said, and I'm kind of like reflecting on that. I just wanted to make that comment. I was like, "Oh, dang, that's good. That's a good point there." Um I guess for us at the center, it's really about, listening directly to our young people and just, seeing what their needs are and how we can best support them with the work that we do in the schools when we're doing, for example, like LGBTQ activities or campus-wide events. We'll really just like ask the like, hey, like, Pride Week is coming up. Like, what do you all want to do? Like, what would be the best way of engaging like your campus for these activities? And it's really just like listening to them and taking their leadership in terms of the best way of going about it and
Yeah.
engaging more of their peers to be allies or advocates for the community in that sense. And so sometimes like as an adult, like maybe I have a different perspective or a different mind point, but the youth at the schools are really the ones who get the climate. And I'm just like an outsider who's like trying to, you know, um, you know, trying to bring in all these different ideas, but their youth are really like, they know what's up. They know what's going on. They know it's what's gonna best best impact their students on their campus. So we've done things like hand painting activities, we've done button making, little things like that you know, it doesn't take a whole lot, but it certainly makes an impact in hearing youth out and just following their lead and having them, you know, do the activities or help them support in doing those activities that would make the most impact. You know, because buttons and stickers are, you know, that's what a lot of our young people enjoy and like, right? So just going by their lead in that sense. And then also recognizing too that, you know, some youth, or, you know, going back to our groups, you know, some youth and young adults that they don't feel comfortable really sharing, like, you know, I want X, Y, and Z. And so it's really working with them to kind of determine what those things are. So maybe it's like having a side conversation with them, or, you know, asking them on a one-on-one, like, hey, like, you know, I really appreciate you being in our group, but like, how else can we create this environment so that you feel safe and supported, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really working and finding different ways of working with our young people and really finding, um, you know, really finding like what works best for them. Because really ultimately at the end of the day, it's really about that trust building, the relationships that you build with the young people and giving them the opportunity and platform to express their needs, right? Without fear or without judgment in a sense.
Yes, absolutely. I think, like you said, the key part there is without fear and without judgment. That is the safest space that you're creating. Keya, thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. I love what you said about like the trust building. I was typing and I said, man, trust building is everything. And really the question, you know, how do we recognize the allyship needs of Tay within our communities? I think foundationally, 100% starts with trust. Because, you know, I think it's just this question is so layered. But it's like that thing where I don't you know, it's in our nature. We're not typically interested in what you have to say if we don't necessarily feel that you care. And I think it's huge within the youth. And I just think being present goes a long way, you know? I don't think there's just a cookie cutter response to this. Like what I'm saying is I don't think there's a one size fits all to this, because the other part of the question says, do they voice the way they want to be supported and advocated for? And one of the things Stephanie mentioned was like people don't feel comfortable sharing, and I agree with that. And I think in addition to that, people don't always know what they need.
True.
And I there's an interesting thing that happens too, even when a resolution or a solution is presented for a need, it's not always taken. For whatever reason, right? Like sometimes fear. I've seen this play out a couple of ways actually in my like group environment around like church. There's like one person gets this physical healing, like had stomach pain for like years, I don't know, 20, 25 years. The stomach pain goes away. And what's so interesting about this moment is, yes, the pain goes away, but there's like more work to be done. Like there are things that are surfacing around like grief and rejection around family. And that work just seems to be so much harder to do and relieve than the physical pain. I also seen this play out with another person where their knee had been messed up from a car accident. Again, like 20 years walking with this pain. The physical pain is gone, but as you continue to work with someone and sit with them and you listen and you hear the broken heart that needs to be attended to. And what's interesting is when you are willing to do the work or grab the thing that's available, it's like not only is your knee healed, but your heart is mended, you know? But I'm saying that in those two illustrations, these are two women. They were actually, I want to say in their 40s actually, but the level of resistance sometimes because of the fear of unpacking what's actually there, can be incredibly real. And I think so much of what I think the answer is to this question is we mentioned being present and like building trust. And I think time, being realistic about meeting people where they are and not just where you want them to be, I think is pretty important too. So I think, like I said, with the do they voice the way they want to be supported? I think sometimes, not always. And I think for me, it goes back to people just don't always know what they need.
That is a very good point. And especially with youth and young adults, that they would be feeling emotional pain or physical pain and not recognizing the source of that or how to voice it. So I think that that is an excellent point. And I sorry to throw a brand new question at the both of you, but you both had me thinking. We were talking about family rejection, and that can happen a lot, especially within the LGBTQ community. And so, have you seen instances where you became an ally because the family is rejecting them for who they are, and what did that look like?
Mm.
It's a deep one. I'm sorry, guys.
I mean, yeah, I think rejection is huge. Um, what I mean is two things. I personally have dealt with rejection, and I didn't know it was rejection. The other thing I mean is, more often than not, one of the forms of oppression we see that we're responding to, that we deal with, is in the area of rejection. There's a way that you can walk around because of rejection with the sort of like an orphan mentality. Maybe you weren't an orphan, but you like embody that, like, and you may not know it, but there's just like, what's interesting about this rejection is it also can go beyond you, and it could be like generational. And I think what's really important about this, especially in the Black community, is the history of America. As then it becomes, I was brought here to be something less than human. And even though we've progressed in different ways around, like, the rights and accessibility and all that kind of stuff, but there's still a residue of like that rejection and that like orphan mentality or orphan way of thinking. But I know for me personally, this is I've dealt with rejection and didn't know it was rejection, but I also recognize when I was free from the oppression of rejection. It does not mean I never felt rejected again, but you develop ways of seeing, oh, that's rejection, or like, oh, I'm responding to this from a place of being rejected. And so why, if I'm healed in this area, why am I responding that way? But this is huge, and I think especially LGBTQ community. I actually think this question does go into the next question. But yeah, and I kind of forgot the question you threw in because I can't see it, but that's my most initial response to that.
Well, that was a wonderful response because you're right. The family rejection element is
Oh.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah, one of the things we say at my church is like, it's a place where you can be loved and accepted, that you could belong, like not rejected. It's like, and it's just so real how deeply rooted our traumas are connected to family. You may not know a book very well, you may not know a movie very well, you may not even know your best friend's story very well, but like the one story you really do know is your own. And so much of that starts foundationally just like from your home with your family. And that's why I said, more often than not, we're dealing with what's surfacing is connected to rejection and family. And so I think that's why it is such a powerful thing to have a community of family, right? Like the family you build and you build and you choose, because we're so wired for connection. We are wired for perfect love. And the reality is, it's like, well, we don't know what that is. But you're still wired that way, right? Like, so then it becomes, man, what was broken in your family that caused so much rejection? And that's where you really start to see some of that like difficult digging work. But saying it out loud, like you just asked the question, saying it out loud is helpful to even for folks to reflect on, like, I remember when I said I was dealing with rejection, I didn't know it was rejection. So what's interesting about that is just last year, I was dealing with some mental health stuff. Like, I mean, I was like, I just felt like in my sleep, I couldn't really sleep. Like I was just graduating from my master's program and I had all these accusatory thoughts of like, it doesn't really matter. You're going to disappoint people. And I remember thinking like, I don't even think like this, you know, and it was so aggressive. I was like getting ready for my graduation party and just felt like it didn't matter. I was overwhelmed whether I was awake or asleep. And I knew it wasn't normal. And my reaction to that was like, I need to tell somebody, right? Like, and my first thought is I should reach out to my pastors, really, because I know they've done a lot of work in this area of like counseling therapy. And so, but the immediate thought after that was they don't have enough time for me. And so I was dealing with rejection and didn't know it was rejection, right? And that's why I said, I know I was able to recognize when I was free from that oppression or way of thinking, because it was just like, it so becomes a part of your identity when you wrestle with rejection. It's just like, oh, this is who I am. But yeah, that's why that's a big one. That's a big one. That's a big question.
Big one. Yeah, I didn't give you time to prepare for it. That was an amazing answer. So thank you. Thank you for all of that. Stephanie?
Yeah, I think Keya pretty, wrapped it up really nicely. Yeah, family rejection is huge. Unfortunately, there's a lot of our young people who, come to the center who share that they've experienced family rejection in one form or another. I myself personally have also experienced family rejection for my identity, which, it's something that I continue to live with and, try to move past or whatnot. We've had youth who've come to the center before where, they take the public bus to come to our space and participate in our groups, and they share it took them an hour and a half to get to our space, but they're looking for that sense of community, right? And that they don't know that their parent, they share that their parent doesn't know that they came to the center in the first place, which is like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe like, you know, that you're experiencing this as well in a sense. And so really it's honestly, like I'll just go back to it, but it's, creating and cultivating that environment where folks can come to also like heal and to build bonds with their peers, for example, and really cultivating like relationships, friendships. Um, Not to say it's kind of family is weird, right? Family, it's there's all sort of different dynamics with family, and some people like are able to easily form you know non-blood family relationships, which is great. Others it's like they're tied to that culture, right, which makes it really hard to move on from your family, right? And so like it at the center, like ultimately like we hope that folks can heal from what they've experienced in the past or traumas that they've experienced from their families. We also try to provide like mental health support through a trauma-informed lens as well, and just breaking down the barriers to accessing mental health to begin with. And so for young people 12 up to 26, we're able to provide free mental health counseling. That's both individual and through process groups as well. And so when myself or our team members facilitate our groups, like we're not necessarily mental health counselors, but we can certainly refer to our mental health program for that additional deeper support in a sense. We can provide like that context where it's really around like building relationships, growing bonds, getting to know people. But when it comes to really untangling like the deepness when it comes to like mental health, that's when we have to refer to our mental health counselors in that sense. But yeah, it's family rejection is unfortunately a common theme that a lot of our young people are going through.
Yes. And thank you for speaking to that, because it's causes so much trauma that can last a lifetime. So it really shows how essential it is to provide that safe space and that space of allyship to empower people and to help them have that strength to overcome that as much as possible as they go through their lives. But it's definitely something, yeah, that can stay. So I think I'm glad that you shared more about the center as well and those resources that are provided. That's really important. I want to talk about cultural representation and recognition within allyship. And I know we see this a lot also within our groups that we partner with for the cultural arts and mental health outreach program. And I will share a little bit on that, but I really obviously want to start with both of your thoughts on this and how cultural representation, do you feel that it's key for allyship and how do you see that play out?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it a minute ago, especially as it relates to the African American community.
Yeah.
Which, and you can say communities of color, but more specific, I think it's helpful to be specific. There's a way that, I mean, culture, right? Like it shapes your worldview. It shapes how you see yourself. And I think if we're ignorant of if we're just like it doesn't matter and everybody's just a person and it's just, on some level there are things we can agree on, but I think it can be not very like productive to dismiss this part. Also because it makes me think about marginalization and it makes me think about intersectionality that plays into marginalization, right? Like people see me, you see a Black person, actually Black, and then it's like Black woman, right? Like identify as a Black woman. And then for some folks, it's like, well, I'm a Black woman and I'm gay, or, whatever. It goes beyond, like, there's just so many layers to a person. It totally, culture plays a role. I also so connect culture to history. So there's a way I'm experiencing my life today and I could think I'm cut off from the history, but the reality is it's like, well, I'm a Black woman in America. And so I think there's this way that I'm moving in the world because there's a way that the world sees me, because of that history there. And there's a way that I see the world because of the history there. And as it relates to like mental health and allyship, what I've learned, I think, in being in the community and just seeing people unpack some really personal things is I've learned like trauma and offense is like a breeding ground for oppression, whether that's mental, spiritual, emotional. It's a breeding ground. It's like, here's where something was broken, or here's where something offended me, or like created a thought pattern, right? Like we have to recognize how much that is colored by culture. Like, and even before that, you can say, well, no two people are just alike. Like, like we have different stories, but I think more specifically, it's like even within a group, I may identify, I said earlier, okay, I'm a Black woman. And you may say, well, okay, she identifies with other Black women and their experience, but even within that group, there can be bias in how she experiences, her world versus mine. So I just think there's just so many layers to how we experience life based on our culture. And because culture, I mean, it's like this umbrella term, but earlier I said it is connected to history, but also like class. I mean, you get into all the intersectionality, right? Like I'm from San Bernardino. A lot of people don't know where that's at or what that is. It's but for those who know San Bernardino, some people they call it the Dino. I remember when I started to work at Walmart in Orange County, many people didn't know where San Bernardino was, but those who did said they had this interesting reaction. You're from San Bernardino? And it's like, what does that mean? Like, but also like I'm like considered one of the ones who's you got out at San Bernardino, and then you have to ask the question, well, why do you have to get out? What is it about San Bernardino? Right. So yeah, I think it's just so many things that shape the way we experience the world and the way the world experiences us based on our culture and our bias.
I agree. Thank you. Stephanie, thoughts?
Yeah, I think like a big part of it, and Keya touched upon this, is like learning and understanding and being open to learning from different perspectives as well. You know, being an ally to, different cultures, like it's really about expanding your worldview of certain things and taking the opportunity and the time to learn about different cultures and, where people come from, so on and so forth. I think it's also important to note like that LGBTQ identities intersect with so many different components of our identities, right? Keya mentioned this, where it's not only race, but it's also, race, gender, ability, class. Like LGBTQ identities can be found in each of those things, right? And so I think it's really important to kind of like acknowledge that and, as allies, do what you can to really uplift those intersections in a sense and making them visible and present in our programs, in our groups, and also listening directly to our young people too, right? I speaking like from the perspective of our mental health department, for example, they've established a multitude of different mental health groups that really fit the needs of folks who come within these intersectional identities. So I know there's like a specific group on or a specific group for like LGBTQ people of color, for example. There's the ones on acknowledging folks from different abilities, right? And so it's really important to really just hear the community and what they need, and just also trying to create and striving to create those spaces through a cultural sensitive lens in a sense.
It's amazing. I love that you both touched on that, to really recognize people as multifaceted and multi-layered, and that we are just not one thing, but that we're several different things that create, such an individual identity that deserves to be respected and acknowledged and empowered in that conversation. So I really like where that question went. And through our cultural arts mental health outreach program, we do partner with a lot of different organizations, especially those that serve dire needs communities. And we've definitely seen within that a need amongst people, especially our TAY demographic, to represent their culture, and especially within their own community. And as we're creating, theater pieces or visual arts projects, when they're doing their writing, like we were at a high school called Cristo Rey, and they really wanted to create candles for the Day of the Dead celebration day, and that was an important part of their culture. And we created African tribal mess with the Black Student Union at Fullerton College, and we worked with the Holocaust survivors and Jewish high school students for them to come together and create art pieces. So I definitely think allyship can be so relevant in just giving people that space to celebrate their cultural identity and to ally them to, like, yes, this is an important part of you, and like you said, the most multifaceted parts of you too, so that you can be recognized in so many different ways. And yeah, thank you guys. So moving on, how do we provide safe spaces for TAY to express their feelings and to feel seen, heard, and valued? And I know, Stephanie, you had a video to share along with this. So yeah, maybe I'll start with you.
Yes. So the video is for the next question, but I do have a visual to share with you all to give you some context about the importance of creating, safe and supportive spaces. And so just to give you some context, when I started at the center over 10 years ago, one of the first things that we were doing was working with schools to put up these safe zone signs. And so this might be an antiquated signage, right? There's different ways that people strive to create these safe and supportive environments. But back in 2012, this is what we were doing in terms of ensuring that students could come to for perhaps like a teacher or a counselor for support. Yeah. So seeing a sign like this up in the classroom where it's like rainbow and it's like bright and bold, like we were hoping that teachers could self-identify as these people that students can turn to should they needed additional support, right? And then moving on, we've updated the sign over the years. As you can see, it's a little bit more modern. It still has the rainbow emblem to it in a sense. But you could see we added an additional piece which kind of reflects on the previous question on intersectionality is the importance of respecting and supporting folks of all different backgrounds. So it reads like it includes race, ethnicity, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, socioeconomic background, immigration status, age, religion, body shape, size, and ability. And this was a pretty, like I was saying, like pretty progressive at the time, just to understand the importance of intersectionality in the work and also uplifting like our youth of color in schools, right? In addition to this piece, we also wanted to reflect on how diverse Orange County is as a whole. And so we did strive to create safe zone signs in different languages. So at the time, we have Spanish, Korean, and Vietnamese, which, in addition to English, were the top four languages spoken in Orange County. That may have changed, or maybe there's other languages that are increasing since we've had these signs printed, but we really wanted to emphasize like especially working with school districts that have higher populations of students of color. So for example, with Santa Ana, Anaheim, it's like more Latinx or Latina students. You know, Westminster, Garden Grove, there's more API students, for example. And so we really wanted to you know, strengthen our relationships and creating you know, emphasizing that creating safe spaces goes beyond just language, but it's also like a cultural thing too. Like we really want to strive to create those safe environments. And then this is like our latest sign. So as you've seen, you know, coming from, you know, COVID, like, you know, during 2020, we did see this reckoning with race and the importance of uplifting, you know, people of color as well as our trans and non-binary communities as well. And so, and then also with just, you know, it's hard to print so many different things when you're, you know, limited on budget as well. And so we wanted to go bold with having this this like progressive pride flag heart in a sense that that really strives to just be inclusive and mindful for like all students, right, in a sense. And so putting up these signs again is just a way of just having a conversation about our communities, the importance of creating spaces for LGBTQ students, and then also acknowledging like that intersectional piece too is just LGBTQ is reflected in different cultures too, and it looks like different things. And so this is like the most current sign that we're working with, but I just wanted to share that piece is just really striving, at least with our work with schools, striving to create those environments where students see themselves reflected, whether it's in policies and instruction. So there's different laws, for example, that mandate for LGBTQ visibility and representation within like social studies and history classes. Also seeing LGBTQ identities reflected in health classes, for example, too. And it's really like having these open and honest conversations with folks that really, you know, that really bring a sense of education, understanding, and removing bias and misunderstanding, right, from LGBTQ identities.
Oh, yeah, that was a phenomenal answer. Thank you. I like that you really celebrated the equity across the board too, and really just showing inclusion and really empowerment amongst all people and including ability as well. That's really important. So thank you. Keya?
Yeah, I love the last image. It was just really cool to see the progression, but the last image, the heart's very that one, I felt that last image. I really like that one. This is an interesting question. How do we provide safe spaces for Tay to express their feelings and to feel seen, heard, and valued? You know, one of the first things I thought about was like, man, it feels like getting to know people sometimes feels like a lost art, you know?
Mhm.
And then I said, well, is it an art? You know, is it a science? You know, like what is it? And I'm well, actually, it's just very human. But I think there are real barriers in getting to know people. Then you kind of have to ask, like, what's in the way of genuinely connecting with someone? My short answer is, um, you know, express their feelings and to feel seen, heard, and valued. I'm gonna say to see someone, well, look at them. To hear someone, listen to them. And I think in valuing someone is connected to hearing and seeing them. And I think Stephanie mentioned it way earlier in the conversation. Like, I'm gonna try to verbatim / paraphrase a bit. I think you said like the youth know what's going on, or like kind of like they know what's up. Like it's like kind of how we phrase that. And I'm saying that to say like going through the motions of what seems like valuing someone or advocating for someone, going through the motions and really not being genuinely connected is like only going to go so far. Um, I think what's interesting about this question too is the first part. How do we provide a safe space? I'm going to ask, what are we protecting you from, right? Like, what is safe for you? I think that, you know, there are cases where a safe space is literally like, I'm protected from, you know, like an abuser or something, like physically being away. But I think even in addition or beyond that, sometimes it's like there's such a work of guilt and shame happening in our stories. And I think when you're listening to someone unpack their story, for one thing, you can feel less alone, right? In a group setting where it's not just you're sharing, we're sharing. But I also think you get the opportunity to recognize thought patterns when someone's sharing their story. And so, kind of the work of what is safe for you, well, if you're wrestling with like feeling like you don't belong, it's kind of going to come out in your story, right? And I think it's like one of those listening between the lines or like what's behind it. And I think debunking those lies that like you don't belong or you're alone can provide a sense of safety maybe you never had in your life. And you can typically recognize when what I call kind of like these like stone, like these thought patterns that are really made of like stone and brick. And it's like, how do you tear that down? Well, one by one. Um, and you can tell when something's like literally lifting off of a person or coming down. But I think this question honestly makes me think about um, self-reflection, right? Like earlier I said, what gets in the way of genuinely connecting with someone? I think you really have to address your own biases. Do I even feel safe in this space as I'm trying to provide a safe space for you? Um, because it's almost like being genuine, being honest, being sincere is gonna like beget that for someone else in its own timing, right? Like you can't force anybody to feel safe or to share and things like that. But there is a breeding ground. I really do think there's like a soil work involved to pull up whatever weeds are there in yourself to address even, do I feel um safe? And how do I create that environment for other folks?
Yeah. Excellent points. Thank you. And the next one, this is the one that Stephanie has a video for. As an ally, how do you promote community building amongst your specific cultural groups? Stephanie, would you like to start?
Yes, yes. So I think relationship building is incredibly huge when it comes to addressing allyship and just expanding reach and building like coalitions and whatnot. I do want to give an example of some of the work that we've done in South Orange County, for example, where these are just some photos from our action down in South Orange County, but a couple like I mean, I want to say like maybe 2 years ago, we had the school board district that was in the works of working on a forced outing policy. One of the school board members had introduced it so to give you some context on this policy would essentially out or mandate for teachers or administrators or school staff to potentially out students if they were going by another gender at school in comparison to home. And so we know that, for example, like it's really important to cultivate an environment at school that respects a student's identity, that also respects the need for having safe and supportive environments. Like we mentioned, family rejection is huge within our community. And so we really want to go about it not in that way, but really bringing parents and families into the fold to talk about family acceptance, to provide families with resources so that they could care for their LGBTQ child. So this particular policy was incredibly problematic. And so when it was introduced to the school board, we mobilized with local communities down in South Orange County to you know, to advocate against this policy in particular. So the top left photo, you could see that this was outside of the school board location, but you could see that there were so many different people that turned out for this particular meeting. And you could see that there's some people wearing white, and then others who were wearing purple as well, which were our supporters. And towards throughout the night, they opened it up for public comments. We had close to 60 students who spoke out against this policy, 60 students who advocated for the support of their peers and how a potential policy could hurt trans students, right? And so I think it was just really powerful just to hear the testimonies from the students speaking. And at the end of the night, we got this reaction from the school board towards their vote for this policy. Oops. If I could play it. There.
No. Trustee Fullerton. Question.
No, this policy specifically, yes.
That votes yes.
Okay, thank you.
Aye. Trustee Davis.
Aye.
Trustee Jones. No, just because I think we need something different and more. Trustee Hanachek. Trustee Parham. No. Trustee Castellanos.
Yay.
Oh, that's
So
great.
Yeah, so you get the point, but basically like it was a huge win because we've seen two similar policies that passed in school district here in Orange County as well as across the country. But really this was like a really important point for allyship and having not only students, but we had families, we had faith-based groups that came out to support us. We had local organizations there. It really showed the power of allyship in that moment, right? So very grateful for everyone who showed up in that sense.
Yeah, that gave me chills. That's amazing. And I love the celebration outside and thank you for doing that. I think it's so important and powerful that we support our transgender youth. Just statistically, they have the highest risk of suicide, and they are also at highest risk of being attacked. And so allyship within this community is incredibly important. And that was definitely a very crucial thing to make sure that that did not go through. And thank you for sharing that example. And okay, I think we can move on to our, how do we promote, well, some of these can kind of go into what we've already talked about. And so if there's anything you feel like we haven't talked about yet, but the next question is, how do we provide empowerment? And do you feel that you have a different answer to that, or is that a question you feel like you've already answered?
Yeah, I think providing leadership roles for our youth to use their voice to contribute to the direction of a program or or a movement in a sense, I think is incredibly important. I know we do have a leadership program within our youth program. And we give the opportunity for young people to contribute to creating different activities and events that they feel would be relevant or impactful for the community. Really, the youth leaders in these program and our youth leadership programs are the ones that steer the direction of like our annual conference that we do every year, which I'll share at the end of today's discussion. They guide like our holiday event, right? So they really contribute their voice in what they want to see, which is really powerful in a sense. Um, and with our other groups, for example, we try to hear and see like how we can make the groups most impactful to them, right? Is it doing more arts-based activities? Is there something else that we want to that they want to see? So we really try to hear directly from the youth. And we also hold aside times for listening sessions with them as well to hear directly about how they want to craft like an activity or event, and we make sure to scribe like all their different ideas, and then at the next meeting we follow up like, hey, like these were the ideas that you all talked about. How do we want to go about it? And so really it's like empowering them in these leadership roles, but then also acknowledging that being a leader looks like different things too. And so it's interesting because we'll have some youth who are very outspoken, whereas some are maybe on the quiet side, but they're really good at I don't know, like other things that help with the program in a sense. So it's really interesting to see. Like everyone has some sort of contribution to an event or a larger community activity, and it's really embracing everyone and what they could bring to the table, really.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, 100%. I think this kind of connects to the last question. I feel like it's knowing like who's in your community. They have their strengths, and then it's like empowerment. Okay, empowered to do what? What haven't you felt like you've been empowered to do? And I think that varies from person to person. Sometimes it's just very powerful to be able to share your story. And then for other folks, it's very empowering to lead an event or plan uh 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 um uh like build out even like a compassion ministry or something where you are meeting the financial needs of someone or something like that. It just depends. I think yeah, I think Stephanie touched on a lot of the things I would put in here. It kind of really goes back to building trust too, foundationally, I think, and even just helping people. The biggest thing for me, I think, in this question has to do with belonging. It's like, how do you help someone feel like they belong? And that's why I think it's totally connected to knowing who's in your community and what belonging looks like for them at that particular point in their juncture. So yeah, that's what I'd say to that.
Yeah, amazing. I like what you said about belonging, and I really like what Stephanie said too about giving those roles of leadership. That is incredibly empowering and gives people that own strength and maybe even skills and abilities they didn't know they had, but then to like give them that space to grow in that. So the next question we're going to talk about is, do we, for as far as providing allyship, if someone feels that they've been marginalized or unheard or unseen, what is your reaction for validating them in that space, but then also encouraging them on in different ways? So how do you spend time in both those areas?
Yeah, that's an interesting. I feel like that's a very special question. I think everybody's like, you kind of goes back to what I said about being like wired for this like perfect love. And in that, you're created from that space of perfect love. And there's something about in that perfect love is validation. It's already there. So then it becomes, well, there's a lot of brokenness like in our families, in our circles, in our communities. And it's like, you can start to feel like you're vying for validation. Like, I just have to get it wherever I can get it. And so it's like, how do you help someone to recognize that they are validated as in their being, right? Like, you're significant, you're here. I think listening is incredibly powerful. Like the part of the question that says, do you allow them the space to feel frustrated in that process, or do you lean towards immediate encouragement? I so believe in the power of a pause. I think pausing before you respond sometimes is just like so helpful in helping the other person have the space to be human and frustrated and angry, whatever it is. But also, so much of the pause is also recognizing that you don't have all the answers. It's actually not on anyone to have all the answers. And if you're signing up for the work and your approach to it is, I know what they need, this is what they need, it's like part of what's happening in that is you're not necessarily actively listening. But I think thoughtfulness is a practice we can never practice too much. And I think listening helps you to know when it's appropriate for an encouragement or when it's appropriate to just like allow them to have that space and you're just present. And it ebbs and flows, right? Like, it's not this or that one. I think there's some blending. It's like a spectrum of that. But this is a special question. I spend so much of my time listening. And you can hear people like work through their things if you just kind of listen and wait. Or like I mentioned earlier, you can hear they're saying something, but you can hear what they actually believe behind it. And I think questions are helpful. In many cases, more helpful than answers, because you may think you have an answer. But it's what we said earlier about like, some people don't even know what they need. So you might be responding to something. They're like, just for lack of better words for an illustration, it's like somebody may be like, it's my toe, it's my toe, it's my toe. And it's like, well, actually, they have this whole thing like in their heart or their brain. And it's just like, it could be their toe, but it's like, there's always just so much more, I think, layered into especially when this question is dealing with frustration, right? Like, that can be a ball to unfurl. And I think pausing is helpful. Listening is powerful. To even know what's appropriate in that moment.
I love that. And Stephanie, before you respond to this question as well, I kind of want to tie it into our last question. And because our last question, it was about how, and it ties in with this one, but how do we show transitional age youth from diverse communities? How do we show them how to be their own ally? And so, yeah, just like if you could share your thoughts on that one, on both of
Yeah,
those.
for sure, for sure. Gosh, Keya really like did it nicely. I think it's really about listening to a young person and just giving them space to process. And then also just reassuring them that you're there, you're present, and you're there to be a listening ear and to offer any resources to support as much as you can, in that sense. And then also just being honest too, like maybe you don't have all the answers, but you can certainly direct that young person to the right direction, in order to get support. And so really like with a lot of our groups, a lot of the youth that we work with, there is this element of encouragement, of validation, of hearing where a young person may be a little anxious. So for example, with public speaking, a lot of us are not public speakers, in a sense, myself included. But we want to provide that encouragement and the believing in that young person that they can do it. Maybe it's little chunks, or maybe they have a smaller role, or maybe it's doing something behind the scenes, right? Like, it's really just finding ways to work with that young person that makes them feel comfortable and encouraging them as the bottom line that they can do it. It's just going to take a little longer, or you might have to remix it in some sense. Um, and so in terms of just like teaching Tay to be their own allies, it's really kind of it's a great tie-in in a sense, but it's, you know, encouraging them to find ways of self-expression in a sense too. So Erin, like I love how much like you work in the arts and you have that outlet. I think art is such a great way for folks to express themselves and to, you know, get their hands a little dirty too, in a sense, which is okay. And with art, there's so many different mediums that come with it, right? There's not only like the standard paints, but there's also photography, there's, you know, charcoal, there's all sorts of different mediums that work. And I think it's important for providing the outlet for Tay youth to have that opportunity to do some self-expression, right? Art doesn't look like one particular thing. It's what you bring into it, which is really beautiful. And so encouraging that self-expression, allowing folks to show up as they are, and you know, really providing the leadership skills to grow and to build self-confidence and resiliency is also really important for allowing our Tay youth to kind of grow and discover who they are, right? Which is really important. So that's how I would kind of address it in a sense. It's really allowing them to take the helm and allowing them to have those outlets for discovering who they are in a sense.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's a great answer. As they all are. Keya, thoughts on this, and then we'll start wrapping up our discussion part.
Yeah, I think just underscoring Stephanie mentioned honesty. I think that's huge. And I say that because how do we show transitional age youth how to be their own ally? I think so much of this work starts with self. Like, you demonstrate honesty, and there's a fear in honesty, right? Like connected to, if I'm really honest about how I feel, how will I be perceived? How will I be accepted? And if we can't do that work and we're walking around telling people you could do it, but you haven't actually done the work, there's things you have to confront within self to really, I think, be a partner to Tay in allyship. And I've seen the effects of it. I think there's a misconception around faith-based communities, like we just don't want to deal with these certain camps, so we're just not going to like look over there, or they're going to disappear, we're not going to acknowledge it, and that's more harmful than anything. And so there's a breeding ground in honesty for places of like belonging and safety. But it's a practice. I think you really do have to demonstrate this allyship through walking in it. And I think it goes back to the first thing Stephanie mentions, like she's a part of the piece to the puzzle. And that puzzle, I think, really comes together when you can, I think, be more present, be more honest. I so think about our generation that just struggles to connect. I went to an event yesterday in person, and we're sitting at this table and we're doing these table talks and we're picking out these questions to respond to. And the event was really centered around the history around Black hair. There's a cultural context there. I mean, that there's so many things you could get into. But anyway, these questions are really unearthing people's connection and memory to hair and texture and these all these different things. And I'm at the table and you can see where, I mean, Stephanie mentioned it, like for some folks, it's hard to speak up. Like we're just at the table. And so you're already kind of coming into the space, like shrinking. I don't really want to be seen and heard. This is uncomfortable, right? And what I found was so powerful was in eye connection, you know, just like being like giving them your attention. I think it's so interesting how you can be in a room and everybody's on their phone. You can be on Zoom and like not really present. It's in our culture to like not really have to connect and be honest. And I think it's like, how can we begin to address the fear connected to honesty, the rejection connected to honesty? But I think the more we do that, the more we really push back a lot of dark things. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I completely agree. And I liked what you said earlier. I felt tied into this question when you said the story you know best is your own. And I think that definitely applies in empowering transitional age youth to be their own ally, is that you don't have to be defined by other people. You know yourself the best, and to empower them to be able to be, I can stand up for myself because I know what I've been through. I know what I've accomplished and I know who I am. And that can be obviously a long process. But yeah, I think, like you said, foundationally, just giving them that strength and that ability and that space and that support to become their own ally in the long run.
Can I add one more thing in response to what you just said? Because
Absolutely.
I heard you say, I know who I am. And I think having the freedom to admit that you don't know who you are is really groundbreaking, I think, for healing. Like, and I think in positioning yourself to be open for help. Because I think it feels like we're in a time where there's a lot of information, even if it's misinformation, it's out there. Like you could just grab it. So then it becomes, you have to be quick about what side you're on, what you believe and who you are and all that. But if we can, again, be honest about like, I don't know, I don't have the answers, don't know who I am. I think it's so incredibly powerful with Tay and that group. Because there's a lot vying for their identity and think this and, but, you know, I mean, it's literally like even just our relationship with media has changed tremendously in this generation compared to before. And so there's a lot vying for your agreement or whatever it is. I mean, there's a lot breeding on your fears. And I think to have the courage and the you know, like I don't know, there's another word, I guess the bravery to just admit like you don't know. I think it's going to be really, really helpful. It challenges us to respond too.
That's so true. Yeah, that's a very good point. I'd like to thank you both so very much for this amazing discussion. Thank you for all your insight and your just heartwarming just feelings. And we can tell that you really do act as an ally in your communities and for all of our Tay communities. And just thank you for your partnership today. Feel really just fortunate to have been able to receive this discussion. And so yeah, so thank you both. And I did want to open it up to our program partners. If you have updates that you'd like to share of events you have in the community or anything else you'd like to add, this is your space to share that now. So love to hear from you.
Hi, Erin. This is Lisa Nino with Thrive Together OC. And so I just wanted to share really quickly that if you can all check out Eventbrite, we have the Thriving Parent Mastering Mental Health English Parent Support Group this coming Tuesday, which is February 18th at 6 p.m. So check it out. Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa. Anyone else?
Sorry, thanks so much to the panelists as well. Just really informative and just and heartwarming. So it's appreciated.
I can jump in, Erin. Lisa, thank you for your kind words as well. So I just wanted to give you all a heads up. So if you're looking to get connected with the LGBTQ Center of C, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Justin, who's on the call. Justin's our youth program coordinator and will be part of these monthly calls. So if you have any questions, you want to collaborate, you want to, find ways of working together, Justin will be the go-to for that. So thank you, Justin. And then I did want to share an event. So I did mention when we were speaking, like the importance of youth leadership and engagement. So I want to share that our Vivid youth leaders are currently organizing their annual LGBTQ youth conference. That'll be happening Saturday, April 19th at Segerstrom High School. The theme for this year, it's kind to every mind. And we'd love for you all to participate. This is a free one-day conference that our youth leaders organize. There's going to be guest speakers. We'll have workshops. We're going to have a amazing community, a community resource fair as well with over 20 organizations. I think right now we're close to like 30, which is pretty good. We're gonna have interactive tabletop games, we'll have giveaways and information for folks who are both allies for LGBTQ youth and also those who are within the community. So I'd love to share this with you all, and I can definitely drop the link in the chat and then email Erin this flyer so she could distribute to the listserv. But it'll be a really great time. So Erin is actually going to be presenting for one of our youth workshops, which will be really exciting. And the more the merrier, honestly. So it'll be a really great day, and I hope you all can join us. Like I said, there's no cost to participate. And everyone is welcome, right? So allies included. So save the date for Saturday, April 19th. And I'll drop the registration link in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, we're really looking forward to being there. It's an amazing event. And like she said, it's for everyone. And so, yeah, wonderful, wonderful event in the community. I can share for my part of the Connect-OC program updates. We do have a exciting event tomorrow at Pacific City in Huntington Beach. There's an art exhibit that we are presenting in partnership with US Vets, the Council on Aging, and Orange County Healthcare Agency. And we'll be from 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. There'll be an art exhibit, and a lot of the pieces of art were created in our cultural arts workshops with isolated and/or diverse communities. And then, like I said, there's also the veterans artwork and Council on Aging. So obviously completely free. We hope that people can join us for that. And then on February 21st at Coastline College, I've been working on an event in partnership with Coastline and with Outside the Wire through US Vets that will be sharing a resource fair and 3 different art workshops that go all day, and there's speakers and there's music and there's free food from the stand. And that's going to be on the 21st, like I said, at Coastline. And it's for more at college age, and especially veteran communities, but definitely please share that with people that you know of those demographics. And we will be sharing out the flyers that are shared here in our post coalition meeting recap. And I do want to also shoot it over to Sarah Chalice for other Connect-OC updates.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. Yeah, we just have a few resource fairs coming up. One at UCI in end of February, end of this month, and then we have one coming up with Cal State Fullerton in April. And we also have we're briefly starting to plan another resource fair with Orange County School of the Arts that's coming up in May. So yeah, those are just a few of the events that we have on our end. So
Thank you, Sarah. And does anyone else have any updates or anything else they want to share?
Hi, this is Terry Steele from Ready Set OC. I put in the chat an upcoming career fair. There's going to be hundreds of businesses hiring that day. Within the link, you can have your participants take a look at it because they're hiring on the spot. And I've always thought to help with mental health, it's good to get that feeling of hope in career. I work with a lot of youth that we were discussing in this forum today, and I just want to say thank you so much to Keya and Stephanie. That was an amazing opportunity to learn more, and I'm glad to see this advocacy group. And I recognized that school, that district, and I would have to say, if we could all continue to advocate, because that board that voted against trying to make that change, many of them were voted out and replaced. So it's very important that we continue to have those conversations and to let them know that we're here and that we're in favor of helping the youth that need it.
Thank you, Terry. I agree. Anyone else before we sign off? Looks like we are good. So I just want to thank you all again for attending. Thank you so much for being a part of this important conversation, and just thank you again to our panelists for the incredibly important information that was shared today. I know that we all will really be thinking about it going forward and really striving to be an ally for Tay in our communities. So thank you all again. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy 3-day weekend. And yeah, be safe out there. Get lots of good rest going back into next week. So, take care, everyone.
Great. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Keya.